guten Tag. Ich bin Frank Steffen, der Redakteur der Allgemeinen Zeitung, und das ist Wiebke Schmidt, meine Mitarbeiterin. Und wie die meisten von Ihnen vielleicht wissen, sind wir auch die Hauptakteure, die die Tourismus-Namibia jeden Monat einmal rausbringen. Und in diesem Jahr haben wir uns jetzt entschieden, dass wir auch hin und wieder mal Live-Sendungen übers Internet an Sie herantragen und Sie ein bisschen näher informieren über das, was wir vorhaben, jeweils im Anlauf zu einer neuen Ausgabe der Tourismus Namibia. So, und eingeteilt haben wir diese Show in 3 Teile, nämlich das erste ist dann Topics. Hier geht es, wie Sie schon ganz richtig sehen können, geht es um die Themen, die uns gerade alle berühren. Und in dieser Woche war Wiebke damit beschäftigt, einige Themen zusammenzutragen. Das erste war B2 Gold, wenn ich mich richtig entsinne.
Ja, B2 Gold, dabei handelt es sich um eine ziemlich große Spende, die B2 Gold das Unternehmen gemacht hat. Nämlich, es geht um sage und schreibe 25 Millionen Namibia-Dollar. Ganz auf den einfachen Weg, B2 Gold stellt 1000 Unzen namibisches Gold zur Verfügung, die gekauft werden können. Dieses Geld, was dann eingenommen wird, das kommt dann verschiedenen Einrichtungen zugute, und zwar, dass das namibische oder überhaupt das Nashorn geschützt wird, weil immer wieder hört man die traurigen Nachrichten von Wildereien und da halt einige meinen, dass das Horn des Nashorns besonders helfen könnte bei gewissen Dingen, und das Geld...
Sexueller Nachschub.
Und dieses Geld ist natürlich zum Teil für den Save the Rhino Trust, genauso auch für die kommunale Hegegebiete, die Umweltkammer und für das Umweltministerium.
Ja, und die werden jetzt diese Barren in den nächsten Zeiten, werden Sie die ja wohl zum Verkauf anbieten?
Die werden zum Verkauf angeboten. Man erhält da mehrere oder bessere Informationen, wenn man direkt auf die Webseite geht, unter www.b2gold.com.
Ja, ist eigentlich einfach zu merken, aber trotzdem nochmal, also b2gold.com, da müsste man das ziemlich schnell erreichen können.
Da hat man keine Probleme, man kann sich näher informieren und dann natürlich gerne so einen Goldbarren bestellen oder mehrere gleich, um einfach für einen guten Zweck damit es zu unterstützen.
Ja, ich finde es eine super Gelegenheit, diese Tiere auch mal lokal ein bisschen wieder ein bisschen in den Vordergrund zu stellen. Denn die erfreuliche Nachricht war ja jetzt unlängst, dass eigentlich in Südafrika die Wilderei ein bisschen abgenommen hat. Bei uns ist es ja schon länger der Fall. Also von daher denke ich, ist das eine wirklich bewundernswerte Aktion. Also sollte sich hoffentlich einiger Unterstützung erfreuen. Ja, und dann wären wir schon im Prinzip beim nächsten Thema. Wir waren dann in dieser Woche auch informiert worden von der Cheetah Conservation oder vom Cheetah Conservation Fonds, der sich auch für die anatolischen Hirtenhunde einsetzt.
Ja, nicht nur für die anatolischen Hirtenhunde, sondern sich vor allen Dingen für die Geparden einsetzt.
Ja, sehr klar.
Weil diese anatolischen Hirtenhunde, Kangal, die leisten wirklich Ungeheures. Gut, als Papi sehen sie natürlich süß aus, aber man sollte sich trotzdem ein bisschen hüten davor. Es sind nämlich keine Hütehunde, sondern es sind Wachhunde. Und die haben einfach dieses ganz Besondere, dass ein Hütehund hält eine Herde zusammen. Die Herde flüchtet und im Raubtier erwacht dann der Jagdinstinkt. Ein Kangal hingegen greift das Raubtier an. Und wenn man es bedenkt, dass der Kangal ein Gewicht bis über 60 Kilo auf die Waage bringt, kann man davon ausgehen, dass ein zarter Gepard wahrscheinlich eher reißaus nimmt. Und so ist dann die Herde einfach geschützt. Die Nummer, die jetzt gerade unten am Band läuft, da kriegt man Informationen über dieses Kangal-Projekt von CCF. Die haben jetzt nämlich was ganz Besonderes gemacht. Sie gehen an Schulen, weil nichts ist so wichtig, als einfach das Bewusstsein für die Natur, für Namibia immer mehr zu prägen. Und dann fängt man am besten an, so früh wie möglich, einfach mit Kindern. Deswegen geht CCF insgesamt dieses Jahr jetzt an 11 namibische Schulen, unter anderem in Otjiwarongo, Utjo, Kombat, Omaruru, Windhoek natürlich und noch viele weitere, um da einfach zu sagen, guckt Kinder, das kann man machen. Man muss von den alten Traditionen wegkommen, wie man sein Vieh hütet.
Ja, und es braucht nicht immer gleich der Gepard erschossen werden.
Das ist richtig, weil ich meine, wird ein Gepard erschossen oder ein Leopard auch, zack, sind die nächsten wieder da. Ich meine, dann hilft eigentlich nur noch Ausrotten und wir wollen doch einfach unsere Natur in Namibia erhalten.
Ja. Ja, und das ist natürlich schon bewundernswert. Übrigens, wenn man diesen Hunden begegnet, das ist natürlich nicht, dass sie scharf sind und alles angreifen und alles außer. Es sind außerordentlich liebe Kerle eigentlich. Was eben die ausprägt, ist, durch ihre Größe sind sie dem Geparden gewachsen und deswegen bleiben die fern.
Richtig.
Und das ist eigentlich das Wichtige. Man muss auch einfach einsehen, von der Größenordnung ist dieser Hund so groß, dass er nicht in einem Hof eingepfercht werden darf. Das geht einfach nicht.
Im Gegenteil, der Hund erledigt seine Aufgabe, der braucht den Menschen nicht. Er kennt seine Aufgabe, er schützt das Viech, indem er Feinde fernhält.
Ja, und dann hatten wir noch das Letzte, kommt ja jetzt demnächst der große Weltpangolintag, also das Schuppentier.
Ja.
Was hattest du da auf Lager?
Ja, es geht einfach um das Pangolin. Es ist ein liebenswertes, völlig archaisches Tier, wie man sieht. Es wird auch liebevoll Tannzapfen genannt oder eben auch Schuppentier. Man muss sich mal vorstellen, die Zunge, es ist kein Fleischfresser, sondern es frisst Ameisen und Insekten. Die Zunge hat eine Länge von 50 cm. Und du musst dir vorstellen, dieser kleine Tannzapfen trägt seine Jungen auf dem Rücken. Also es muss eigentlich ein total süßes Bild sein. Leider gehört dieses Pangolin zu den meistgejagten Tieren, weil auch wieder aus demselben Grund wie das Rhinohorn, was wir jetzt nicht näher erläutern wollen, droht dem Tier die Ausrottung. Es steht seit langem auf der roten Liste. Man kann ein paar gute Nachrichten verlauten lassen, weil im vergangenen Jahr gab es 139 Verhaftungen, einfach in Bezug, es wurden Wilderer entdeckt, die mit Pangoline entweder nur die Schuppen, was man sich nicht vorstellen kann, tonnenweise Schuppen wurden in asiatischen Ländern konfisziert. 139 Verhaftungen haben in Namibia stattgefunden und man konnte immerhin 45 Schuppentiere noch lebendig mal retten,
und
dann
immerhin eine Besserung,
in ihren Gebieten wieder aussetzen.
Ja, und dann haben wir als letztes, das werden wir auch so immer einrichten, werden wir Ihnen jede Woche, weil wir diese Show jetzt einmal die Woche eben rausbringen, haben wir dann das Bild der Woche, das wir Ihnen gerne vorstellen würden, und das wäre dann hauptsächlich Bilder eben von Lesern, denn unsere eigenen Bilder bekommen Sie ja in der Zeitung oft genug zu sehen.
Ja, nur ganz kurz. Dieses Foto wurde uns zugesandt von Martin Zimelka. Es ist einfach ein faszinierendes Bild und jeder wünscht sich hier, dass in Namibia zur Regenzeit, dass jetzt endlich mal wieder ein bisschen mehr nass von oben runterkommt. Dieses Bild erschien auch vor einigen Jahren im AZ-Wandkalender und ich würde sagen, jetzt genießen wir es einfach mal. Es zeigt übrigens in Waterberg.
Ja, und viel wichtiger ist vor allen Dingen, wir haben jetzt einfach mal zugegriffen auf unser Archiv und haben dann natürlich viele schöne Bilder, die wir Ihnen immer wieder vorführen können. Aber es wäre natürlich lieb, wenn Sie uns diese Bilder einfach zusenden. Ist gar nicht so schwierig, einfach an die AZ senden, kaufen sich eine AZ, dann können Sie gleich unten die Adresse nachsehen und wir haben wenigstens den Kontakt mit Ihnen dann aufgenommen. Und dann senden Sie uns diese Bilder. Wir wollen bestimmt die also aussenden und damit die anderen Leute sich das eben auch mal angucken
Nicht nur senden, wir haben auch die Möglichkeit, die im Tourismus Namibia zu veröffentlichen.
Genau.
Immer wieder haben wir in der AZ eine Rubrik mit faszinierendes Namibia. Und bei richtig hammerstarken Bildern besteht die Chance, dass es auch in unserem AZ-Wandkalender publiziert wird.
Ja, und vor allen Dingen wollen wir auch die Tourismus-Namibia-Internetseite wollen wir jetzt vorantreiben. Das heißt, die bekommt demnächst ein neues Gesicht und wollen wir unsere ganzen Artikel da auch anders anbieten. Und da wird es dann auch eine Rubrik geben, die sich dann eben nennt Leserfoto. Und ja, so hoffen wir, dass wir Ihnen ein bisschen mehr Freude bereiten können. Und ja, wir wollen natürlich unsere Informationen auch teilen, denn wir haben wirklich teilweise schöne Bilder, die wir von Lesern kriegen, aber auch Bilder, die wir unter anderem, die unsere Journalisten antragen, wenn sie eben auf Reise gehen und nicht nur immer Nachrichten, sondern eben auch ganz normal für die Zeitung schreiben. So, und somit wären wir dann schon beim nächsten Thema. Da gibt es dann eben jetzt nochmal die sogenannten Highlights dieser Woche. Hi, yes, and let me quickly introduce you. This is Chloe Deer. Chloe is traveling throughout Namibia. She's just been down to South Africa for Tourism Namibia. As you can see, if you've reached this point, you know by now that the idea is to present to you on a weekly basis a new show, a live show or live broadcast over Facebook. And the idea is obviously that Chloe gives us some impressions of what she's been through while on her way, what she's seen, what she's experienced, and we'll from time to time obviously have guests and or news like we just presented in German, forward to this one. So yes, Chloe, you've just prepared for the newest magazine.
Yes.
You've been on your way to the north and looked at the weaving and the carving and whatever. Tell us a bit about it.
No, if you want authentically kind of made crafts, I think the north is definitely the place to go. I mean, I was so inspired by all the weave work that happens in the communities over there, and even just the process of collecting the reeds and things that they use for crafts, like you can see on the video. It really is just such an inspiring ancient craft that I was mesmerized by, and also the woodwork. So it's more, you know, they make use of the resources available in the area, which is wood in abundance and grass, obviously. So it's all just ancient crafts that have been revived, and they still use in the local villages. And my favorite thing is to just go and spend time with them and just be a fly on the wall to see how.
Yeah, this is actually the reason why we want to present this show, because Chloe and I actually spoke about it yesterday. She goes out and she prepares something like 1,000 photos, and possibly the 3 nicest ones hopefully land in the magazine. But at the end of the day, there's so much more to show. These impressions this is not only about showing you the sights. It's not only about trying to impress you with the best photo shot that we were able to get. It is much more than that. It is trying to introduce the people to you, make you realize what's going on out there and what we see every day, and which you're always pleasantly surprised if you travel in Namibia and you suddenly meet people and you've got a totally different impression to what you thought they would be. And so in a similar way, we'll always bring you news of Namibian people, but obviously on travels further beyond that, because we're trying to reach a point where we impress on the traveler coming from South Africa, Botswana, or Zambia, Zimbabwe, it doesn't matter where from, to not only enjoy Namibia, obviously that's our major idea, but it's also to take you on the path to Namibia and show you what you can enjoy as you approach Namibia. And this is where you've spent a lot of time now, recently. So we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks. But then there's the nice project Sijwa, as you taught me yesterday. I didn't know before because my tongue got in a knot. But tell us a bit more about that project.
Yeah, that's another project that I found so inspiring. When I was in the north, I was lucky enough to stay at Nambwa and be a part of their Sijwa project, which is a community-based project in between their 2 lodges in the north, where they make
This is now in Old Caprivi, what is now better known, or at least as known as Zambezi region.
And they make use of the waste products from the lodges and kind of are recycling and reinventing them into sellable arts and crafts, which benefit the community. And they they're in the process of crushing bottles to make glass beads for jewelry and for chandeliers. And really, Tanola and Dusty, the owners of the lodge, have been traveling the world to see what works and see what they would like to implement in this project. But altogether, it's fascinating how they are melting the aluminium to make aluminium jugs, and there's so much to do with the waste, because you don't like seeing such a beautiful part of the world with litter. So they really are making a huge effort.
Yeah, and I seem to remember you still told me that they actually fill up plastic bottles and use them as sort of bricks.
They're actually in the process of building the project. It's very much in the beginning stages, and so all the buildings where all of this will take place is made out of plastic bottles filled with rubbish and sand, and so it's very much just making use of what's available and repurposing and reinventing, so it's quite exciting.
So yeah, like I said, we'll always bring you a few snippets from even trips gone past, simply to add on more information that often we find that our magazine could be 120 pages and we don't have that much space. So this is where we can fill you in and give you some more information. And then you obviously fell in love with Bagatelle, which you visited in the south twice already, is it not?
Yes, I must be careful of saying I'm not inspired by everywhere I go, but obviously these are highlights, and Bagatelle, specifically their cheetah project is what really touched my heart. And so every time I go there, I make a point to just spend time with Goran. But it really is like a Garden of Eden in the desert. I mean, you have donkeys, you have peacocks, you have, and they're all animals that have been saved, and it's just a haven, a safe haven for all of these lost and wounded animals, and I just absolutely love what they are about. Goran is the man who takes charge of taking care of the cheetah, and he drives in his bakkie with Flash, one of the cheetah who he's closest to, and it's actually but some of these photographs make it look as if the cheetahs are in positions where they kind of are uncomfortable, or they shouldn't be in that, but it's just he has such respect for the cheetahs, and the relationship that they have. I just could sit and watch it all day. So if you ever want to be blown away, it's amazing. He's been working with cats for something like 30 years, so his knowledge and understanding of their behavior is just really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and that already brings us to the end of today's show. So finally, we present to you To the Point. Good day. We're obviously here busy with our first ever live broadcast of the Tourismus-Namibia, which is obviously our magazine which comes out on a monthly basis. And for me, it's a special honor and privilege to welcome Gitta Petzold, who I've previously unfortunately still named on a maiden name, so it's not Gitta Stolt, it is Gitta Petzold, who we welcome here today on our first ever broadcast. So Gitta, obviously you are directly involved with the tourism industry all the time. Tourism, obviously it's the German derivation of the name. With this coronavirus panic, almost I would call it, that's taking place in Namibia, how do you experience it in tourism and in the tourism sector as such, and how does Han actually handle the situation as regards corona and awareness?
Well, we've seen that internationally the coronavirus outbreak that has started in December, but we actually only got to know about it in January, has had a major impact on tourism. We've seen airlines cancelling flights to China. We've seen big organizations bar travel to China or have their nationalities either taken out of the country as fast as they can, or then now have forbidden travel. So yes, it has had a huge impact, especially on the tourism industry. But I would always like to caution against that extreme panic. Last week, for instance, the media reported on a suspected coronavirus case, and I had my members phone me immediately, Gitta, what is this? Because it's not been proven yet, and already we have guests phone us to say we are cancelling because Swakop is at risk. So, and as much as we need to be realistic about the huge impact that this, some people call it already a pandemic, has on the tourism industry worldwide, we need to take caution that we always keep it in relation to what actually are the facts. And at this point in time, there's no space and really no permission to play on sensationalism. It can hurt the tourism industry tremendously. We've seen it a couple of years ago with Ebola virus, where people shot away from Southern Africa because Africa had Ebola. And countries like Namibia were further away from the Ebola crisis in West Africa than Europe, for instance. So we have to take it into perspective. And yes, I do believe that we need to take caution. We need to be aware of it. So I'm all for awareness creation, sensibilization of people and their general conditions of hygiene, but we need to stay with the facts. And yes, if there are suspected cases, but at this day and age so many people come down with the flu because of weather changes or getting wet in the rains that fortunately have come for some parts of Namibia, but not all flu symptoms are necessarily corona related, and that should be made very, very clear. And yes, if we do talk about suspected cases, we've seen that in Botswana, we've seen that in South Africa. Only until such time as that case has been confirmed as being corona should we actually state so. We should always make it very clearly that there are suspicions, but make it clear that none of that has been confirmed yet.
Yeah, it basically also boils down to people when reading magazines and or newspaper clips or whatever. These days, very often you see it on the internet. I think the important part is whoever reads an article, just make sure that you understand what's actually standing there, because I seem to remember that for at least in the case of NMH, we all, whether it's Allgemeine Zeitung, Republican or Namibian Sun, we made a point of saying that this was just an indication of a case. And obviously all these cases need to be tested. But how does that impact on you so far? Have you got serious cancellations? How do the people report back to you? How do you get that awareness through to the people who actually serve people in a restaurant, or for that matter out at the lodges and so on?
Well, our lodges and the hospitality industry per se is always very particular about hygienic conditions. So in the general operational sphere of any kind of hospitality or catering setup, we always plead for basic hygiene. That means washing your hands, not sniffing into somebody else's collar as such. In terms of the coronavirus, I must be honest that I've had sporadic and sort of singular calls from our members from the coast, but also from lodges who have said, Gita, what are we to do in terms of preparing ourselves and preparing our staff over and above the basic hygiene. I've been told by one of my members that they have inquired about face masks and hand sanitizers to stock up on the lodges. And apparently Namibia is currently sold out on all these items, which shows that, yes, whether we were prepared or not, it seems to be a national issue that everybody is now jumping onto having extraordinary measures put in place in terms of basic hygiene of face masks. And yes, one could look at procurement on a general basis, whether that would have been necessary to have more than 20,000 face masks, because I believe that was the amount that people were looking for at some point. I do believe, and from what we hear from authorities and also through the media, fortunately, there have been screening procedures put in place at the airport and also at Namport, at the ports in Walvis Bay for screening, extra screening for.
Are you aware of anything at the border points?
Border points, not yet. They said the airports, and because that's where the international traffic comes in. It's either the ports or the airport. International travel coming through the border post would have been screened, hopefully, by other international sources. You would have seen also from the international developments that mainly those airlines that have direct links to the Chinese market, either crossing via Addis Ababa or Nairobi, they would have looked at their flight schedules to see whether some screens would have had to be put in place. But because Namibia luckily doesn't have direct links to China, we're not as much at risk. I know that our national airline is taking precautionary measures. They've said that they are fully aware and are implementing the general screening and control mechanisms that are to be put in place by international sources. I do know that our Ministry of Health and Social Services is also doing something. I've heard that via the grapevine, because in as much
have they been in contact with you in that respect, or is it just what you hear and see?
Unfortunately, it always seems as though we always lament that tourism is everybody's business. When it comes to these things, tourism is always sort of informed last about official regulations. Han has also tried to make contact with with the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, where we believe that His Excellency the Ambassador has actually spoken to the media about precautionary measures, about having spoken to the 15 and more Chinese tour operators that we have here in Namibia already, and actually almost instructed them to halt all tours to Namibia going forward until such time as the control of the outbreak can somehow be confirmed. This has had some effect on some of our members, because there are bookings that have already been made for February, because that is usually the travel month, February and October being the main travel months for Chinese travel to Namibia.
Because of the New Year and stuff.
Exactly, it just passed, but some of them are able to extend. And I've been told that some cancellations have already come in, while those people that are already in country, I mean, according to what I have learned from the Chinese embassy, is that they are allowed to obviously continue their travel, because they traveled before the ban was put in place. So there is a travel ban on Chinese travelers to Namibia, and we heard that our ambassador to China has also halted all issuing of visas to Chinese people.
Prospective visitors. No?
Exactly. So yes, there is a halt, and we've appealed to our members to be cognizant of that official ruling, which we don't have on paper. So unfortunately, I don't have an official statement from the Chinese embassy or from our Ministry of Foreign Affairs or International Relations and Health in terms of that. But already now we have issues of cancellation policy and fees to be paid, etc., where people say, but it's a confirmed booking. They said they were coming, and now they're not coming.
So it turned out as a way.
Exactly. So we will have issues in terms of cancellation policies and cancellation fees that always come into play, and we'll have to see how that turns out in terms of squashing some of the policies that we have, because this is an extraordinary event. It's an extraordinary happening. They talk about a pandemic already. So in as much as we are so far removed from the Asian market as such,
actually very close to it. Yes.
we are affected. And
just a quick question in this regard. How does Chinese tourism affect us as such? Because if you look at the statistics, it's not that much yet. I know that the government is in the process of trying to get these numbers up and sell the country as a tourism destination. But I think for the moment the risk for Namibia is still relatively low as compared to other countries where massive streams of tourists.
Especially if we look in terms of the leisure tourism. I've just finished the statistical data for 2019, and if we look at our statistics, then the Chinese and the Asian market combined don't make up more than 3% of our leisure tourism market. But one should not forget, and that always comes out as an argument when our ministry releases the tourism report, where they talk about 1.5 million people having visited Namibia, and we from the bona fide tourism industry always have to argue that only a third of those people are actually bona fide tourists that spend time at lodges, that hire cars, that really spend the tourism spend in the leisure market that we actually consider for tourism.
So there's a difference between tourists and visitors.
Yes, but we do have Chinese visitors coming to Namibia for business purposes, for trade purposes, and we do have quite a number of those, and they are potentially could be just as much a carrier of certain viruses than a leisure tourist market. So in terms of tourism, yes, our tourism market, and we are working at it, you know, that for a matter of a year now, we've launched the I Go Namibia campaign that Standard Bank together with their Chinese partners have launched last year, where they want to market Namibia as a tourism destination amongst their Chinese clients. It's a world over project that they started. I think Namibia is the fourth country in Africa. Ghana, South Africa and Kenya have already gone through that I Go travel campaign to solicit the Chinese market, and Chinese travel is huge. I learned
it is,
2 years ago at the ITB, they were talking that Chinese they've already overtaken Germany as travel world champions in terms of the numbers. But in terms of the way that they travel, we haven't seen the impact as much because Namibia is very far, and the needs for the Chinese travel is not necessarily what Namibia has to offer.
Thank you, Gitta. Thank you for coming in. I'm sure we'll have Gitta in again on various occasions. In the meantime, if you are watching this broadcast, please feel welcome, if you're involved in the tourism industry, to contact us and make sure that we help you to get your message across. Thank you very much.